العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
الله عليه وسلم said تنكح المرأة لأربع لمالها ولحسبها وجمالها ولدينها فاظفر بذات الدين تربت يداك. Then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the woman is married for four, and these four doesn't mean that she's only married for these four. There could be other reasons. And also these four that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, these are also sought in the man. Firstly, limaliha, for her wealth, walihasabiha, and lineage, wajamaliha, and her beauty, walidiniha, and her religion, meaning how close she is to the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if she's a practicing Muslimah or not. Then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam encouraged the person who wants to get married to give importance to the religion, and the person practicing the most. When we're talking about religion, we said it is what? فعل الواجبات وترك المحرمات. فعل الواجبات and ترك المحرمات. Doing the wajibat and leaving off the muharramat. Nah. And it's important to understand that, يعني فعل الواجبات and ترك المحرمات. So when it doesn't mean that a person can only get married to a woman who wears a niqab, gloves, and who's a serious student of knowledge, and that's the only sort of woman that can be married like. It is the woman that should be married is the one that فعل الواجبات تفعل الواجبات, the one that does the wajibat and leaves off the muharramat. Obviously, the more complete she is, the better. And likewise also, the man. Then there are other attributes that the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi mentions, al-wadud, al-walud, al-hasiba, the ones that give birth, and the ones that give birth a lot, give children, and also those the affectionate ones that love their husband. Also we looked into, or the last topic we talked about was the fact that when a person is looking to marry someone, then they should also look into the family of that specific individual, because the family can have a big say in the marriage later on in life. The Shaykh says, وَإِذَا وَقَعَ فِي قَلْبِهِ خِطْبَةُ امْرَأَةٍ فَلَهُ أَنْ يَنْظُرَ مِنْهَا مَا يَدْعُو إِلَى نِكَاحِهَا. طيب. This is a mas'ala referring to when a person wants to propose to a certain woman or an individual, then it is permissible for him to look at that which attracts him to her. It is permissible for him to look at that which attracts him to her. So khitbah is طلب الزواج من المرأة من نفسها أو من وليها. It is actually proposing to a woman and wanting to marry the woman. So these are called أحكام النظر, or أحكام النظر عفوا, rulings pertaining to looking. Firstly, the ruling of looking at the individual that a person wants to marry. The Shaykh says, فَلَهُ. We can understand from that it is permissible for him to look at the person that he intends to marry. But there's also another opinion that it is mustahab. And a lot of scholars are upon this opinion. And that is Allahu A'lam, lakin the stronger opinion, because the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فَإِنَّهُ أَحْرَى يُؤْدَمَ بَيْنَكُمَا. Then it is more likely that you will have harmony, peace and harmony amongst yourselves, and continuity. Also the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were some companions who came to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they mentioned to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they wanted to marry a certain individual, and he said, have you looked at her? And the Messenger and the Sahaba said, لا. The companion said, لا. He said, فَذْهَبْ فَانْظُرْ إِلَيْهَا, or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, go back and look at her, because it is an encouragement for him, so that later on he knows what he's getting himself into. He knows who he's marrying. طيب. There's three ways that a person can attain that goal or come to know of the person that they want to marry. Firstly, by actually going to a certain location with her wali and looking at her. And this isn't only for the woman, the right of the fiancé, not only the right of the man, like, and also the right of the woman to look at the individual that she wants to marry. So either going to a certain place with the wali and looking at one another. And that's one. Or it's permissible for the person to look at her without her knowledge. Likewise, look at him without his knowledge. Look at him or her without her knowledge. Mathalan, she's outside and the person looks to see that if he is attracted to her. Or he visits somewhere, he visits a house, and then he looks at her with the intention طبعا of marriage. This doesn't mean that an individual is allowed to look at, his eyes can wander off lap. This individual that he intends to marry, then he can actually look at her without her knowledge, without her knowing, and it doesn't matter the fact that she doesn't have the hijab on. It doesn't matter the fact that she has the hijab on. That's why Jabir radiallahu anhu used to say, or when he wanted to get married, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam encouraged him. He said, فَكُنْتَ أَتَخَبَّأُ لَهَا. I used to go around the corner, or I used to look around to see to look for that which will attract me to this individual, to this woman. طيب. Thirdly, he can ask a relative of his or someone that he knows, طبعا a relative of his, from the females, from the women, to go and look at this woman and give him feedback. That's the third way a person can do or can get some sort of idea on the person that they want to marry. لا, a female relative. Female relative. The male relative, if you do ask him and he's actually attracted to her, he might say, she's not attractive. Lakin, the third option should be the last option. The third option should be the last option. The person should either look himself or look around or go to an area where he believes that he can see her. Doesn't mean that he stalks her, lakin in a place where he believes that he can see enough of what will attract him to her. طيب. The third one is quite tricky because it's a bit of a gamble, because what you want, what you're attracted to is different to what women find attractive. And a woman will always say, Fulana is attractive, no matter what. So it's always better for a person to look. Like, in which of the two is better? For him to go to a certain location and look at her, or look around and find a certain situation where he can find her in that she can find something that will attract him, or that which will attract him. Which one is better? Say that again. A meeting in a certain place. That's better, yeah? Does everyone agree? Without her knowing. Without her knowing. Without him knowing as well. It's better.
Because maybe you can develop like an attachment when you start talking, like the meeting. So without her knowing, there's no like anything between.
Right.
When they're alone, the first person should ask you, I think.
La. They'll never be alone anyway. They'll never be alone. They'll always have a wali, like her father, her brother, or whatever.
Even when it's like, she doesn't know when someone's looking at her.
Say that again?
You see how you said, they don't know they're being looked at. Look.
Yeah, you can.
And you said which one's better?
Yeah, which one's better? Like looking at her without her knowledge, or going to a certain location with her wali, or sister going to a certain location with her wali to look at the individual.
Ustad, do you mean like from a Shari'i perspective, like what's better, like safer, or do you mean what's better for the marriage? Like, because the way I see it is, if he sees himself, he knows what he's attracted to, but if it's someone else, I'm thinking of the fact that if she isn't attracted to the other,
لا, we're not talking about someone else. We're talking about you looking at, hiding out in a corner looking. Or going to a certain room to look at her, يعني in a ghurfa which is closed and looking. Hanging on, yeah.
knowledge, yeah, because he knows that to see her in an active state, like she is
Wallahi, no, we'll see. We look into the issue of beautifying. That's something else anyway. Like in a way, Allahu A'lam, like in some of the scholars I've heard say that it's better for him to actually look. It's better for him to actually look at her without her knowledge. Look at her without her knowledge. Because that's the first thing that can attract you to a person, the looks. So when you see the person, then you can kind of get an idea of whether you will or are willing to take a step further or not. طيب. What about pictures, exchanging pictures? Huh? What do you guys think? Looking at the maqasid of the Sharia, the objectives of the Sharia and the objectives of nikah. Ahsant, faqih, jazakallah khair. Although it's quite common nowadays, it's quite dangerous because firstly pictures can make this Photoshop, you know. Not only that, people look different in pictures, number one. The person might be more attractive in real life than in the picture, or vice versa. Secondly, this picture, a person can share this picture and share the picture with other people, and it's a reality, it happens. SubhanAllah, some people, mainly men, they actually, when they look at a person, they get other people to also look at the picture. Ma adri where the ghira or the jealousy is, lakin, that is haram. That is haram. So the fact that it can be different, the person can be different in real life. Also, a person can beautify themselves in front of the camera. So a person can accept the nikah based upon that picture, and then later on, the person is completely different. Or the nikah may not continue, or they may not go ahead with it. They may not go through with it. And this picture is still in the hands of this individual. So, based on that, then it is haram. What about FaceTime? It's haram because someone can do a screenshot. طيب. Huh? A what? Allahu A'lam. So with regards to the khitbah, ala kulli hal, if a person does go ahead and go to a certain location, firstly the wali has to be present. It can't be with khalwa. Khalwa meaning just the two individuals on their own. That is haram. She has to be there with her wali, brother, uncle, father or whatever. طيب. Secondly, this looking, طبعا looking in the first place is haram. Lakin there's a concession, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Messenger sallallahu have made that permissible for a certain need. The need being nikah. So this looking should not be one of shahwa, to please one's sexual desires. Like it has to be solely for the purpose of wanting to have nikah. So if a person has to genuinely be serious about the nikah, like if a person, due to having some sickness in their heart, says, every day of the week I'm going to go look at a different individual, just for the sake of it, then that is haram, they're sinning. طيب. That is haram, and they're sinning. Secondly, one of the conditions that the scholars place upon it, or place upon actually going to a certain location, certain room and looking at them, is that a person has to have, or be kind of almost certain, or dhann rajih, about 50, 60, 70% sure that he will be accepted. That he will be accepted. Mathalan, I'll give you an example. If a person is an alcoholic and they take all forms of drugs, wal-'iyadhu billah, and then he goes to a religious family, and they know of his state, taban, and he goes to a religious family with a practicing sister, mashallah, tabarakallah, and then he says, I want to marry your daughter. I want to go to the living room to look at her, to marry her. In that case, it is not permissible for him to do so. Why? Huh?
There's no really likelihood.
Of course they're going to be. What's the likelihood of them accepting this individual? Zero. Zero. So based on that, it is haram for him to go and look. Like if a person, if they're on the same sort of level, then it is permissible for him to go and look, because obviously, hopefully, there won't be a reason for them rejecting him. Although they can come up with many reasons, like he doesn't believe there's a reason specifically there for him to be rejected or refused with. طيب. During this period of the khitbah, if a person مثلا goes one time, are they allowed to go back again and look again? Second, third, fourth time?
The reason is still there.
Naam. They're allowed to go and look at each other first, and on the second or third, fourth occasion, up until he is satisfied or she is satisfied. طيب. During this period, lakin, the contact has to be minimal. The contact has to be minimal. Because anything can happen. Anything can happen. Sadly, you find people talking to each other for years, and it's as if they're husband and wife, and then all of a sudden they have a disagreement, and then they no longer end up marrying one another. So it's haram to طبعا go on dates. It might sound funny, like it actually happens. It's not permissible for him to just go around her house, just for the sake of it, have dinner over at the in-laws, even though they're not married yet. طيب. Because obviously that's not his wife at that particular moment. Also, not to be FaceTiming or talking excessively over the phone. All of these situations lead to having feelings. That's a reality, and you're all adults. The more a person talks to an individual, they'll either end up loving and wanting one another or hating one another. طبعا if they hate one another, then خلاص انتهى. Lakin what can happen is they grow strong feelings for one another. And it's a reality. And then after some time, for whatever reason, they do not go through with the nikah. And then they're both faced with a dilemma. Both faced with a dilemma. And also, because they've exchanged pictures and that they've gone wherever, they know too much about, or so much about one another, even though they're not married. So the connection or the relationship has to be minimal before the marriage. طبعا there's no touching, no shaking hands, all of that is impermissible. All of that is impermissible. Now you may find that me saying these things is strange, and I understand why you would find it strange given the audience, where you're all practicing individuals. Lakin, when people haven't got the same sort of religion, or they're not practicing like you, then anything is possible. Now, also it's permissible though, for in that period, the khidbah period, the proposal period, to exchange gifts, for him to send gifts to her. It is permissible. Naam, and also he can go over to the family to get to know the family, not only her, to get to know the family and have dinner with them and so on. طيب. If he gives her gifts, and then all of a sudden he says, I'm not going to marry her again, can he say, I want my gifts back? not making these things up. The scholars talk about these things in the books of fiqh. It's permissible for him to do so, like, and it's not from the honour of a man to go back on something that he has given someone to. طيب. The next mas'ala, what is he allowed to look at? Which is quite important. What is he allowed to look at? The person is allowed to look at the face of this individual, the hands, and the feet of the person that he wants to marry. Some scholars say he's allowed to look at the hair as well. Like, by looking at the hands, the face, and the legs, a person can somewhat get an idea of what the rest of the body is like. What the rest of the body is like. So the awra that we're talking about, مثلا for the man, what is the awra of the man? Navel to his knees. It doesn't mean he can come to the proposal in 3/4 lengths. No. That's not the awra. No. The man has to be covered, likewise the woman. Lakin, it's not permissible to beautify oneself. So it's not permissible to put on henna and put on gold and makeup and so on, all of these things in order to beautify oneself. It doesn't mean that a person's has to go there scruffy like they've just woken up. La.